The safety is off. There's a round in the chamber. This is Armed Alabama. Sponsored by McCoy Outdoor Company, Mobile's hometown full-line outdoor sporting products and gear store. An interactive talk show discussing self-defense, product reviews, shooting tips, safety, and more. Your calls, comments, and texts welcome at 343-0106. Now, here are your hosts, retired judge and certified NRA instructor Rusty Johnston and certified NRA law enforcement instructor Adam Strange.
They're gonna pry these guns right out of my hands when they come to take them away. I believe in the rights that my fathers gave me when he signed the Constitution that day. No misguided president or crooked politician with a greasy pocket be spared. When the hard-working man gets tired of your cry, it's gonna rain wrath, beware. Don't tread on me, I'm American free. You're not gonna take it away. I stand up to fight for my freedoms and rights. That's the price you'll have to pay. Don't tread on me, I'm American free. Red-blooded to the core. You ain't ever had a fight in your life like the fight that you're your champ for.
Good evening. This is Judge Rusty Johnston, and welcome to the Armed Alabama Show this Tuesday night. We come to you every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. on FM Talk 106.5 out of Mobile, Alabama. And are we broadcasting simulcast? We're having technical problems if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. So you can go to the FM Talk webpage. It's www.fmtalk1065.com, and you can listen simultaneously to this as you could on the radio. And sometimes, well, FM really getting affected by lightning and all. But remember that we are Alabama's only firearms-based radio talk show, and we come, as I said, every Tuesday night, 7 to 8 p.m. Our number here at the station is 251, wish it was still 205, 251-343-0106, and you can call in with your question or comment. You can also text to that number, and somehow we get it down here. I'm pleased tonight to have as a guest Matt Green, a local attorney. He's been on a good bit, and Matt and I are going to talk about constitutional right to keep and bear arms, where that comes from, and kind of go through some of that for you. And we'll kind of get you up to date. One thing I'm going to talk about in a few minutes, well, I'll go ahead now. About 3 weeks ago, Matt, a gentleman called in and said that he owned a Taurus, which is a brand of firearm, semi-automatic, I can't remember the model, but he said there was a problem with it. I think it was a recall out, but he said, should I just sell that? And I said, I would be uncomfortable selling it knowing, there's a recall. Why don't you just send it in? They'll fix it. Oh, how long is that going to take? Well, I can tell you, I have a Taurus 85 revolver here, and it's about 15 years old, certainly 10, maybe 15. It's one of them with the lifetime warranty. It had a problem with the cylinder, and as instructed, I sent it back to them without my Crimson Trace grips on it. When it came back, they had fully repaired it, cleaned it, and put new grips on it. Wow. Free of charge, 2 weeks, even though I got a letter from them saying allow 8 to 12 weeks for repair. It came a day after I got the letter.
Wow.
So, Taurus is not it's a lower mid-price firearm, but they did an excellent job. And in fact, I've sent guns back to Ruger before and Sig Sauer and Beretta, and they've all done a great job and fixed it within a couple of weeks. And they generally about anything you have, obviously if you drop it off a 20-story building and dents the frame, that's not a warranty issue. But, when something happens, especially within the first 5 years, they can fix it very easily and a gunsmith can fix it very easily, probably cost you $30, $40. But check your warranty, and I know with Sig Sauer, they not only fixed one, it was 10 years old, they buffed out some scratches. I mean, they did all this other stuff, and no charge. And, my letter, I sent it to them, said, you'll bill me for it or whatever. So kudos to all of them. Also have right now, I know a gentleman in the audience was thinking of doing this. I've got, actually, this sounds extreme, 3 Browning Auto 5s, the old types, that are up at Art's Gun Shop in Missouri getting refurbished. And hopefully they'll be Christmas present. Well, one will be a Christmas present. Actually, two will be. So they'll look real good. These are, I think, well, one gun is from the maybe 30s and two are from the 60s. That's a gun they made, a shotgun they made for 100 years. And they stopped making it for about 10 and then started making it again because the demand was there. But, Matt, say hello to everybody. What have you been up to lately?
Just keeping the streets safe and protecting the liberty of citizens.
Well,
and the wrongfully accused and those who are rightfully accused.
Well, I gave you actually a file that is 90 years old, a criminal file that my grandfather handled because you've been working on some matters regarding that. And it's amazing. Now, I did a lot of cleaning out when I was leaving my old office in 97, but that's one file. Oh, better save that one. And it has all the original paperwork in, the original indictment and everything, 90 years old.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Look forward to going through it.
Good stuff in there.
Very famous killing. Of course, your grandfather was involved in the defense of many manslayers in the 30s.
Yeah, it was really pretty interesting because it was a local attorney and city judge, I believe.
They called recorders then, I think.
Yeah. And he was having an affair with the woman, started out at 14 years of age. At some point, the records indicate that I've got, he paid for an abortion for her, which of course was illegal then. And it even gives the address with his. I mean, there's all kind of stuff in there. So it's a very interesting case. She was convicted of what we would call today criminally negligent homicide.
It was a misdemeanor.
Yeah, 1 year in the county jail, and she was facing, of course, death.
Well, yeah, I mean, she took a pistol and a brown paper bag up to his law office.
Yeah, blew him away.
Shot him twice.
And she had what was her remark? She said,
"He wrecked my life."
Yeah.
And before he had a dying declaration where apparently at the old city hospital, he said, "She shot me for nothing." Of course, she had come back to Mobile apparently to claim $30,000 that he promised her if she would stay out of Mobile, and she also wanted a new car, but.
Yeah, that's when cars you could get a good one, $1,500, I'm sure, or less.
But the crazy one, another plot twist to it is when they
it's like 35 or something like that.
1931, the summer of 31,
so before the Battle House.
Yeah, it was before. It was just before the crash. But this was after he was pretty. I think he was pretty well off, but then the crash just about wiped him out, and that's when his stipends to her ceased, which prompted her to come back to. Her foster father is what she called him. He was actually legally adopted her. But when they probated his will...
That's even stranger.
I know. When they probated his will...
She named it, right?
She was named
Well, that was part of the reason when she was convicted of the misdemeanor, then she got to inherit under the will, which she wouldn't have if she'd been convicted of an intentional act.
Yeah, he named his wife. Although separated, he was still married at the time, and he named his paramour of some 19 years, who was 14 when the relationship began. The relationship began when he took her under his wings to pay for her to go to school to become an educator. And when the $30 loan came due, she could not pay it, and he found an alternative way for her to make payments.
Well, not to equate these two situations, but it's amazing the different kind of work ethic, because we had a secretary, and she's still with us, but she's probably 90 now, that she took a summer job at a law firm, like in the summer when she was 15, 16. And, near August, she told the lawyer, I'll go back to school a month. He said, no, you don't. and she worked, from then on. Of course, excellent secretary. But, it's kind of different then.
So for those of the listeners that don't know, we're talking about Foster Hale was his name.
Yep.
His brother used to be the county coroner, Stephen Hale, I think it was his name.
And then the defendant, Willie Mae
Clausen.
A woman.
She was married and divorced twice. She claimed during the trial that Foster had wrecked both of her marriages.
Oh, it was kind of an insanity defense.
Yeah, they actually pled insanity.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty interesting. When we come back from the break, folks, we're going to talk about Second Amendment, the Constitution, why Matt and I and most others think you don't even need a Second Amendment to restrain the federal government. But if you have any general gun questions, call us here, 251-343-0106. Visit our YouTube channel. I just put up how to look up Alabama and federal gun laws, and I also posted a video about a so-called flash mob attack in Philadelphia on the 4th of July, which
This wasn't Disney?
It's kind of interesting. No, this is really scary. So just go to YouTube and put in Armed Alabama and go to the homepage, and you'll see it there. Those are two interesting things, and especially the one about looking up law. If anybody has the internet can look up and learn for themselves. But remember to call us here, 251-343-0106 on FM Talk 1065, and we'll be back after this break, which will be about 3 minutes.
This program is a production of Armed Alabama, LLC. The comments and views of the hosts are those of Armed Alabama, LLC, for which it is solely responsible. The view and comments of the callers, guests, and texters do not necessarily represent the views of the sponsors or advertisers of Armed Alabama, LLC, or of Armed Alabama, LLC, Bigler Broadcasting, LLC, FM Talk 1065, or WAVH. No comments from Judge Rusty Johnston should be taken as legal advice, but as educational information. Judge Johnston is not engaged in the practice of law and should not be sought out to answer legal questions off the air. Seek legal advice from a qualified attorney who knows the complete specifics of your legal matter.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
What we've got here is failure to communicate. Some men you just can't reach. So you get what we had here last week, which is the way he wants it. Well, he gets it. And I don't like it any more than you men.
Welcome back to Armed Alabama. This is Judge Rusty Johnston along with attorney Matt Green. And we have a caller here, and I'm going to, is it Billy from Chickasaw? Charlie? I can't quite, I'm looking at another monitor across the room. Hey, Billy.
How y'all doing tonight?
Pretty good. How about you? What can we do?
I'm great.
What can we do?
I was just wondering, is it legal to carry my gun on my job site?
Well, where do you work? You don't work for at the federal courthouse or anything like that, do you?
No, sir. I work for Satsuma Parks and Recreation Department.
Yeah. They may. Well, I tell you what. Go to our YouTube channel about how to look up law, because I'm going to lead you through it, because I don't think there's a court. It says courthouse, but it then further says district attorney's office. So I'm pretty sure a courthouse, Mobile has every court in it, but I think if like Saraland has its courtroom in your city hall building, that's not covered by that act. Now, don't you think so?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. But here's maybe your problem, Billy. I don't know. A lot of times, let's just say it was a private employer and not a public employer. They'll put, you can't bring a firearm in here. And you can't be arrested for it, but they're going to figure out a way to fire you. And I doubt they can do that in Saraland, since it's a public,
Satsuma
body. Satsuma, I'm sorry, public body. But you just be a little careful. But you got to make that decision. Am I going to risk my life, or am I going to obey some rule they have? And if they don't have a rule, yeah, it's legal. But make sure you have a permit.
Yeah, I got my permit. I just, it's my constitutional right to bear my firearm, and
there you go.
I just didn't think my employer could tell me not to do it.
We need more people that have that position, because so many people. Well, I don't want people think I'm nuts or a gun nut or that. It used to be normal. Remember when everybody had a shotgun in the back window of the pickup truck? Of course, I wouldn't do it now because somebody'd steal it. But if you did that now, somebody would probably call SWAT.
Sir, do you have any other weapons in the car? Not stepping out of the vehicle?
Yeah. And, the answer to all those, never consent to a search, that's of your car.
Is there anything I need to know about in this vehicle,
And,
sir?
I'm pretty good saying that, because I would guess everybody listening to this show is a law-abiding citizen. More thieves, crooks, criminals are caught they give the police the consent, at least tacit consent to search their cars, and they find a dead body in the back or cocaine or whatever, and that's fine. But, good citizens don't give them the right. Because, as I tell people, you may have loaned your car out to your, let's say, daughter, and she had her boyfriend in it, and he had a marijuana joint dropped, under your seat. So,
or a prescription pill of mom or dad that
Yeah. But good question, Billy. Thank you for calling.
Oh, thank y'all very much. Y'all have a good day.
You too. He raised this issue, constitutional right, Matt. And as you know, of course, the Constitution was ratified a year, probably at least, before the Bill of Rights were. And everyone, nobody goes through this. They think the so-called Philadelphia Constitutional Convention, which really wasn't that, but let's just call it that, that's the end of it. No, it went to all 13 states to be ratified, and you can find the records of those ratification conventions and what people said. And the proponents of the Constitution, those wanting it passed, let's say like an Alexander Hamilton, said, we don't need a Bill of Rights because this government is limited to the enumerated powers stated in the Constitution, and you can count that anywhere from 8 to 18. He says, for instance, he was focusing on the press. He said, why would we have a Bill of Rights that said freedom of the press shall not be restricted or done away with when the federal government has no power to do that? It's never given the power. And by that same logic, the federal government's never given the power to regulate, control, have anything to do with firearms. And the Second Amendment, First Amendment, Second Amendment, all the amendments were put in as an additional safeguard against the federal government. It didn't apply to the states.
And we have the anti-federalists to thank for that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The kind of the generation of Americans that the history has just given a complete.
Oh yeah, let's say a George Mason,
Luther Martin, George Mason, St. George Tucker.
There's some great writing too. And the one, and it's kind of confusion who it was. Everybody back then wrote under a pseudonym, anonymous. You couldn't do that today. You'd be arrested for violation. If it pertained to an election. But the letter. The Federalist Papers were never called the Federalist Papers until the 60s. But let's just say they have a book you can get called the Federalist Papers, and a lot of people have that. Get the anti-Federalist Papers and read Brutus's concerns. Brutus,
eventually a stronger central government would
judiciary in particular. Right. He said they will gather up all the power. And, this eventually happened. But you can read all the predictions that come up. And, Alexander Hamilton has become such an idol now.
John Marshall, another one?
Yeah, I'm doing a kind of a question. Do you like having whatever trillions of dollars in a national debt? Yes or no? Well, no. Do you think the government ought to be borrowing more than it can raise? No. Well, that's all Alexander Hamilton. He was, as John Taylor of Caroline called him and others, like stock jobbers and the paper money party.
Right.
And, there's a lot to do. He thought borrowing a bunch of money would help the credit of the United States. Of course, the worst thing they did is they guaranteed all the individual states' debts, which then it went from, they were market value was 5 cents on the dollar to, let's say, $1 on the dollar, and people, including Abigail Adams, many members of Congress were trading, speculating on those bonds. They all vote, let's assume the state debt. Well, Virginia had paid off its debt. Massachusetts hadn't, so it was...
it's incredible. You go back and read the Anti-Federalists, and they had just fought a war to get away from all this.
I know.
And they're crying, we fought a war to shred ourselves of all this centralized power, and our government should be instituted among men to preserve liberty. And now what are we doing? We're creating the exact same thing we abandoned.
Well, that's right. And, John Marshall, who I wrote an article about recently, as I point out, not only was he a larger slave owner than Thomas Jefferson, he is worshipped by every legal group from the far left to the far right. He was a proponent. He thought the Alien Sedition Act was perfectly legal and constitutional. He didn't think it was wise politically, but so what? But they've scrubbed all that from history. Marshall is this great person, and all he did, he committed fraud. He told the Virginia ratifying convention. No, the federal government's only limited to these. And, 15 years later, he's on the Chief Justice. He's ruling exactly opposite. And it was, today you'd call that fraud, and it would void the contract. But all that aside, our point is the reason we're raising this is from time to time you get left-wingers. I don't want to use liberal anymore because that actually was a good term before progressives ruined it. But they're not liberal anymore, leftist or Marxist. They'll come up with, well, we need to repeal or amend the Second Amendment because they don't like the Supreme Court's ruling in Heller. And it wouldn't matter if they repealed it. You still have the rights, all the rights pursuant to the Ninth Amendment mentions this, that free Englishmen had when the Constitution was ratified.
Yeah, the rights retained by the people that they would never give up.
Right to travel, the right to defend yourself. I've got a list of them I'll get into after the break. But you have all those rights.
Acquisition of property.
Yeah, you don't have to list hundreds of rights. You can pretty well look up, and a lot of conservatives say, we don't want to go that route because that'll mean, you've got the right to an abortion and the right to marry your horse and all this. No, you had the rights that free Englishmen had in 1787, which is pretty easy to find.
Well, you look at the heart and soul of the Constitution and this country, the way it was founded, you really have to go back a step further to the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
Why you formed government and the purpose of government, and what happens when government gets beyond the delegated means that it's the people give it, and it's no longer acting with the consent of the governed. It's the right, and that's kind of a radical proposition to be talking about, but that's exactly what they said.
Well, that's right. It's what was the quote in the Declaration? A prince whose character is
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
King George III.
is like a tyrant or whatever. It doesn't have to be. I'll get it after we come back because it's a good quote.
but there are certain unalienable, what Jefferson called unalienable rights.
You couldn't sell them, give them away.
That no government could take away from you.
You couldn't, if you agreed to it, say, I want this repealed, so we will not have guns. No, you can't do that. It's there. But folks, we're coming up on a break. Remember 251-343-0106. Give us a call or text a question to that number. Anything about firearms, the law, anything you want, Constitution, be glad to talk to you. And you can check us out. We're on Facebook now at the Armed Alabama FM Talk 1065 page, and you can see us there. And I may have a show and tell for us. I'll see what we can do for you. We'll be back after this break.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
Survival kit contents check. In them you'll find 145 caliber automatic, 2 boxes of ammunition, 4 days concentrated emergency rations, 1 drug issue containing antibiotics, morphine, vitamin pills, pep pills, sleeping pills, tranquilizer pills, 1 miniature combination Russian phrase book and Bible, $100 in rubles, $100 in gold, 9 packs of chewing gum, 1 issue of prophylactics, 3 lipsticks, 3 pair of nylon stockings.
Shoot, a fella could have a pretty good time in Vegas with all this stuff. Slim Whitman, Dr. Strangelove. Matt is, I told you I have a video where it's basically showing us the screenshots showing you how to look up firearms laws. And one of the sites I recommend that people go to, don't have any financial interest in it, it's called handgunlaw.us, www.handgunlaw, all one word, .us. You can, for instance, states honoring my license or my permit and get that. You can look, and we'll talk about this in a minute. Here are the states that, as of this date, well, July 1st, honor Alabama's permit. Arkansas, Arizona, Alaska, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Idaho. Wow, what's that one? I'm not sure what.
Indiana?
Well, I assumed ID was Indiana. Anyway.
That's Chickasaw.
Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Mississippi. No, that'd be
Michigan.
Michigan. Wow, that's
Missouri,
Mississippi,
Montana,
North Carolina, New Hampshire. Of course, they don't have licenses, I don't think. North Dakota, Ohio. That's kind of surprising me. Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Virginia, Vermont, and Wisconsin. West Virginia, and Wyoming. You notice the states that aren't there: New Jersey, New York, etc.
What about California?
It's not there either. And this is a pretty good, kind of map. Say, stay away from the states that aren't listed. I put in one of the video I put up about the trouble in flash mob in Philadelphia. At the very end of it, I said, you can grab something from their visitors bureau, and I said, it says visit Philadelphia, whatever, and I added in beautifully the city of brotherly love, as I did in the New Orleans CVS video, which everybody should watch, Shootout at a CVS in New Orleans in the Garden District, and you can kind of see it there. And when I start playing it, I have your Tourism Cares for New Orleans, your gun-free, crime-free destination. So that's a place to visit. But handgunlaw.us is real good. If you never go anywhere, you can just download Alabama's handgun laws. I hadn't found, the only thing they're weak on is where are no firearms permitted signs valid in private businesses, and they're not unless they meet the criteria in the Alabama Code, which means you either have to have continuous posting of guards when you're open, and either like turnstiles, card keys. An example I gave, one place that I know of meets that. They may not today. They did 2 or 3 years ago. Is the Battle House office complex. I told people I'd be irritated to be there because you have to use a card key like the courthouse, and any visitor has to be clocked in. And so they have the guards, and you can't just enter freely and go to somebody's office. So they would qualify, assuming that's still.
What about rest areas?
Rest areas, well, that's one of those things, you get into it. It's the state, but no, they finally took those signs down.
I remember you and I had that discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, and it wasn't even no firearms. It was no weapons. Well, if it said no deadly weapon, I can find a definition in the code for that. Gun, knife, club, stiletto, that's all this. But no weapon.
Blackjack.
Yeah, right. I don't know what no shotgun, walking cane, but I don't know what, just in general a weapon is. That can be
mace.
Anything. Be your fist, obviously mace, which remember again, folks, we've got a good video up at the Armed Alabama YouTube channel about don't rely on wasp spray. A lot of people buy a can of wasp spray because it shoots 25 feet. And you can get it, I'm sure, for $5. You can also get various, I think it's Saber. Anyway, one of them that I have, several of them, is kind of a gel. It'll shoot 25 feet. But you're going to spend $40 on it as opposed to $4 on wasp spray. But it's going to work. It's been tested. And I've been hit with it. There are people that I know that it doesn't work on, but it's like there's some people you can shoot 10 times and it doesn't work on. But don't use the wasp spray. You may have some legal liability, too, because you're actually violating the federal regulations. You always violate one every day, but it says it's to only be used in accordance with the label, which says hornets, wasp, whatever, not people. And bear spray also. Most pepper sprays, OC sprays, are 10 to 15% of the active ingredient. Bear spray is 1 to 2% because you're not supposed to hurt the bears. Barbara, give me that. I do have one show and tell that I showed a month or two ago, but some of we have different people watching on YouTube.
For the viewers, this is not an actual case from an actual case.
Right. This is
a Walking Dead
new version, my version of the weapon.
Can you get that at Clint's?
You can. You can't get it at McCoy's. Okay. This is the Walking Dead bat that Negan used. He called it Lucille in his basically just a wooden
This is
baseball
real.
bat.
I mean, this is actual barbed wire.
Yeah, with rusted barbed wire.
Have you added more barbed wire since you brought it up here before?
Not the last time. The first time I have added more because I thought it just didn't look bad enough.
Yeah,
But,
that's pretty intimidating.
It added several pounds to it,
Get a
actually.
nasty case of tetanus with that.
Yeah, I made sure I had got cut rusted barbed wire on my old fence I had in the country to make it look good. And you can, it's kind of an experience to make one. Have good gloves on and eye protection.
Is that a left-handed or right-handed version?
This right-handed
Or could
version.
you go both
Depends
ways?
on which
Left-handed
way
version.
the wire is wound. I think.
Left-handed versions are extra.
But that could be devastating in a dark house.
Oh, you could. And I
In the middle
actually
of the night.
had a case one time. It didn't have the wire, but it was a baseball bat, and I think somebody lost their eyes. We had everything, of course. But
You also had that case with the dagger in the gentleman's head. Remember when I worked for you, that case?
we had a
That was a pretty bad case. wasn't it?
armed robbery. I just heard NT video. They're looking for somebody who robbed it. That's why it's familiar. I think that's the same. I'm sure it's the same place. But anyway, this group of people that one of them had Ozzy Osbourne
Now,
tattooed on
give
his
some context.
knuckles.
This is when you were circuit judge in
Yeah,
Mobile County.
right.
There was an actual criminal defendant. Was it a charge?
Several. Well, they were. Yeah, there's several of them. Armed robbery. It's either assault, one, or attempted murder, and imagine these people were so smart. They left one of them left his ID. This is when you had joined video clubs. Well, he left his ID there, and so they robbed. They were really casing it when he joined. So they robbed it the next night, and
Like a movie
he
gallery
had this
or something?
horse, like horse head dagger. It was dagger, but it had a horse's head on the handle. They stabbed this guy in the head. It amazingly went through the two hemispheres of his brain. He runs out after they, flee first, screaming. Well, it's 2 nights before Halloween. People are pointing and laughing. They think it's a Halloween joke. Somebody testified to that.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was actually on the front page of the newspaper getting it taken out, hammered out at the hospital.
But, I mean, there was an actual picture of him, I remember, in the
So he
stretcher.
He survived.
He survived.
with it in. Yeah, he did.
Then I found out he was actually one of my probationers also. So they don't make defendants like they used to. But, it was. They ought to still be locked up. I never got a parole notice. But the only person I had, a good deal of mercy on is the mother of one of them. And it was I think it was Pretty Boy Floyd's mother, one of the big gangsters. And she was charged with,
Accessory or something.
And the judge said something like, if a mama can't hide her son out, who can? I found that quote and I used that.
Hey, Judge, you mentioned something real quick in passing just then, and I've wondered about this before. When somebody is released on parole from prison,
Yeah.
who all is notified?
Okay, when they come up for a parole hearing,
Right.
the district attorney, is supposed to be notified, the judge that presided over the case, and the victim.
Right.
And, obviously the problem with that, if they've served some decent time, which sometimes they haven't.
Can the victim go to the parole hearing?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would imagine in a lot of cases that makes because they're handling – they've, I think, stopped, looked, and listened since they had some bad publicity a few months ago. But, I had cases where somebody sentenced to 20 years and a year later, they're up for parole.
I have a car wreck victim who was hit by a defendant who was sentenced in 2007 to life on a drug trafficking charge. And she got hit. My client got hit last year, 2018. He was
out. Okay, this is the quote of the day, and I won't ask anybody to answer it, but great quote from 1929, and it's, let's see, gentlemen don't read each other's mail. I almost said email. And that was us, then at the time, Secretary of State, Henry Stimson, who was Secretary of State to Herbert Hoover, and he was closing down the office of cryptolinic office, the decoding office, which is the forerunner of the NSA. And it was coming out of his budget. And what is this item? And he went over, and the guy was telling him, cited, they were intercepting the mail. And he said, gentlemen don't read other gentlemen's mail. And he cut the budget,
it out.
and they closed. So I thought that was good. Matt, that everybody says they can't do this with gun laws. We'll talk about this when we get back, because the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. Very few people know what that word means, because it's a word that, I've only seen it in regard to copyright infringement. It's not a word we use every day. And the general rule of construction that people like you and I follow is the ordinary meaning of words and phrases, the public meaning at the time of the enactment of the Constitution. What did infringe mean? So we're going to come back after the break, and I'll tell you, because I pulled a few books and dictionaries, and I can tell you what they say it meant. Once again, we don't need the Second Amendment, but it's a little different than most people say. But remember, our number 251-343-0106 on FM Talk 106.5. Call us.
Step up to the firing line. Armed Alabama is back. Questions, comments, and texts at 343-0106.
Now remember, when things look bad and it looks like you're not going to make it, then you got to get mean. I mean plumb mad dog mean. Because if you lose your head and you give up, then you neither live nor win. That's just the way it is.
Welcome back to Armed Element. Clint Eastwood there. And, a movie he made just came out, The Mule.
Have you seen it?
No, I haven't.
You need to watch it. It's good.
He's got to be 90.
Oh, yeah, he is. Is it depressing? Because I kind of came away with that it
seems like every movie I click on, I think,
Yeah, it was just like the other one. What was the other one that he did named after?
Unforgiven was a dark movie.
Well, I thought Honky Tonk Man was too. There were several.
But I didn't know this. It's based loosely on a true story.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I watched.
What was the premise? He was going to just make one big run.
Right. He was going through I think he'd gone through a.
Well, it's because the Republicans hadn't raised Social Security enough. He had to run drugs to make money, or he'd have to eat cat food. Okay, we know that the Second Amendment says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. There's no definition in the Bill of Rights, so you have to go by the public meaning of the word infringe, which in 1789 or when was the Bill of Rights? Well, it was sent out then, 1790. But anyway, here's from 1792, a book. It's not really a book of definitions. The distinction between words esteemed synonymous in the English language. Blah blah blah. Here's the definition, which is the same in Samuel Johnson's. To infringe, transgress, violate. All these words imply acting contrary to law. But the proper idea of infringe is to break, transgress, or go beyond the bounds of, and violate, to use violence or commit an outrage. One of the other dictionaries, rape is a synonym.
What about usurp? Think that fits in that category?
Well, it could be. But my point is, now, the courts have never gotten into it because they've held, as long as you can put reasonable, as long as there's a compelling state interest, you can put reasonable restrictions on every right we have. And what is a reasonable restriction? Well, I think our pistol permit is reasonable because the what you have to do to qualify for one is the same you have to do to qualify to own a gun, not be a felon, be over 18, et cetera, et cetera. But you can't, $20 a year fee, I don't think is that heavy an infringement. You don't have to have one to own a gun, of course, to carry one. But if that were $200 a year, I would say that was an infringement.
What about a poll tax to vote?
Well,
isn't that a fundamental right too?
Well, that's one they dreamed up because if you remember, I think it was 10. Most people say you had to be a white male property owner over 21 in order to vote. That's actually not true. By 1800, 11 of the 13 states, you had to be a white male, but you didn't have to own property.
Well, I think that in the Jeffersonian, Republicans put an end to that.
Well, and I'll tell you, England didn't have their franchise as large as ours, as expansive as ours, until World War I. I mean, you had basically where we had, let's say 45% of the population, because you take females out and blacks out. England had it's very complex, but you had to have a pretty good amount of property to vote, and they had like 10%, were voting up until World War I. They gradually expanded, but it was I don't know how they figured it out, because it was always, if you had real property whose rents equal blah 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 a year and all this nonsense. But the point is, again, when you look at the Constitution, it's kind of like reading the Bible. That's more complex, obviously. You have to consider the words as the people at the time used them, not as we use them.
Or ones that evolve according to modern standards of decency that are malleable to the author of the said opinion.
No, we're not going to do that. That's just more nonsense.
Gran Torino was the name of the other Clint Eastwood. Thank you, Matt. I saw you sent that in. That was, but he's directing and acting, and it's incredible.
Oh yeah, Gran Torino is great. I was going to put a couple of those bumper lines from it, but there was none I could find that didn't have any profanity in it. But folks, remember, go to our YouTube channel. We have, I think, 881, something like that, subscribers. We need to hit 1,000, and we may start doing some extra shows, special shows on that. But you've really kind of got to get to 1,000 to have some extra features available. So I know a lot of people will go to YouTube channels and watch videos, but they'll never subscribe. We need you to subscribe to that. Just so we'll get over that 1,000 subscribers. And I could look and see who you are, but I'm not going through that whole list. I know we have 3,500 likes, or close to 4,000 on Facebook, but 880-something subscribers on YouTube. And I put interesting stuff there all the time. But, Matt, one thing we were discussing, too, we were talking, and there's something closely akin to it. We were talking about the can't wear a mask in this state. And then Antifa, it was originally enacted as anti-Ku Klux Klan law. But you've got that one, and then you've also got the carrying the firearm within, how many feet of a, quote, demonstration, blah, blah, blah. It's 100, it's a certain number of feet. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that was written in order to keep, let's say, Klansmen, that type, from disrupting civil rights marches. You couldn't carry a firearm.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to keep a concealed carry permit holder from carrying his firearm in Mardi Gras.
Well, when I was a municipal judge, I had that exact same situation, and I had asked the prosecutor, I said, demonstration, define what you define as a demonstration. And he said, well, I said, the way I look at a demonstration, it has to be the espousing of a certain political view or belief.
Or advocacy.
Right. And I said, what Mardi Gras, what is the political belief of a Mardi Gras organization?
Yeah. And listen, I understand them. They would. But,
other than the comic cowboy.
Right. But I still want the law and the Constitution followed. And now I'll tell you, if you have one down there and they see you, they're going to arrest you. And, and you'll have to prove later. But it was like a case about many years ago where a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, I think he had a shotgun, some kind of long gun, and he had it over his shoulder walking on the sidewalk down the street. And he was arrested for menacing. Well, menacing requires, pointing it at somebody. I'm going to shoot you, shaking the gun. It's not just you can take a firearm or a pistol out and not threaten anybody.
You'll see oftentimes a disorderly conduct charge.
Yes, and now the legislature, added that that the mere open carrying a firearm is not disorderly conduct, nothing more, and that's something people need to be aware of. Police have a tough job, but.
Is that a well-recognized right in order to defeat qualified immunity, though?
Well, that's a good question. And qualified immunity, if you don't know, if you've ever come up against the government and somebody has, most of the lawsuits against various governments are kind of frivolous, but some are really serious where somebody, let's say, is killed in a high-speed traffic chase where the police are chasing just a speeder and a family of four is killed, and you generally can't sue police department, the city, the police officer, because they've got qualified immunity.
Because you have to defeat qualified immunity, you have to show not only that your constitutional rights violated. You'd think, I get over the hurdle.
But they knew it was probable.
That it had to be a clearly established right, and the courts have defined clearly established right as you must almost have to prove an identical set of factual scenarios.
Absolutely.
That the law enforcement would have been on notice that the conduct they engaged in was clearly unconstitutional.
Yeah. And, I don't like the way it is. I don't want to remove it.
But that's judge-created law, by the way. There's nothing in the Constitution that says...
Exactly. They're feeding off the state immunity, which, of course, Congress had to pass a constitutional amendment, the 11th Amendment, in order to really enforce the terms of it. Folks, our time is almost up here. Remember to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. Go to Facebook and like, and we'll be posting some more things that kind of keep you up on the gun laws. There's some terrible storm in the Gulf, and we'll see you next week on Armed Alabama.